Okay, welcome back all. This is going to be reading two. So this is Robert Dahl's On Democracy book, chapter 4. Excuse me. What is democracy? And this one will be a pretty short little. This one's basically just like a thought experiment. Dahl says, me and some like-minded people are trying to create an association. We need a constitution. Um, and regardless of form, all members are to be thought of as politically equal. So, how do we build our Constitution? So, Section 2 breaks that down into 5 criteria for democratic processes. The first is we have to have effective participation, right? All members have to have equally effective opportunity for weighing in before any policy is passed. And so there's got to be equal and effective participation. The second criterion is voting equality. All participants must be given an opportunity to vote, and all votes must be counted equally, right? Um, I would point out that this is a problem in democracies, and especially in the US. We have a very low turnout. And as we talked about in chapter 1, that means that those who do vote tend to get better representation than those who don't. Many countries, many democracies at least, try to overcome this problem by mandating elections, mandating the vote. And they say, like, it is your civic duty and a law that citizens must vote. Of course, there's exceptions if you're not capable of voting um, or you're disabled. And usually there's a very small fine involved, somewhere from like $20 to $100 or whatever, if you don't vote. And then many of the times, even when you don't vote, they don't actually charge you, right? It's just supposed to try to incentivize the vote and equalize everyone who is voting so every segment of society gets represented. Another problem in the US, this idea that all votes must count equally and everyone must be given an opportunity to vote is, we've had periods of pretty severe voter suppression. So the Japanese during World War II and internment, Black citizens during Jim Crow, and of course during much of our enslavement history. And then arguably votes are not equal for the Senate, right? A vote in I don't know, let's say Minnesota, nah, not Minnesota, let's say like Montana, right? Like incredibly rural state, their voters, each vote is far more powerful than a California voter when we're talking about the Senate, right? So all House votes are arguably equal. Senate votes aren't equal. While they count them equally, the representation is wildly disproportionate. Okay. The third criterion for a democratic process is enlightened understanding. So this just means that we have to have time to learn about the policy before there is a vote, right? You can't just say, okay, on the agenda today, we're talking about this, and now we're voting on it, right? You have to have a time, and this is for many reasons, or at least one of the reasons why we have waiting periods for discussion for new potential changes to policy and stuff like that, where you'll have a 90-day open comment period or something like that. Okay, the fourth criterion for a democratic process is agenda control. And he says here, quote, the members must have the exclusive opportunity to decide how and, if they choose, what matters are to be placed on the agenda. Thus, the democratic process required by the 3 preceding criteria is never closed. The policies of the association are always open to change by members if they so choose. So members not only should have the right to vote, but some have some say so about the agenda itself. And then the fifth criterion is inclusion of all adults, right? So this is that um, full and open suffrage, regardless of gender, race, religion, whatever. As long as you're an adult, quote unquote, um, then you have to be allowed to vote. Okay. I'm going to skip through section 3. We'll go to section 4, some crucial questions. Okay. So, question 1, he's saying this was all about an association, but what if we're talking about the state level, which will be sort of the next chapter? And I just wanted to define state here, right? Because it is important to use definitions because we use a lot of these terms interchangeably in common parlance, like state or nation or anarchy, right? But they have very different meanings and very precise meanings in political science. So, the definition of a state, according to Dahl, is a very special type of association distinguishable by the extent to which it can secure compliance with its rules among all those over whom it claims jurisdiction by its superior means of coercion. So this is kind of a crazy definition, and some people say that it is a monopoly on the legitimate use of violence against its own citizens. Right, the state is the only one that has a right to carry out violence against its own citizens. Citizens cannot do that to each other, and other states cannot do it to our citizens. But in some sense, this is what it means to be a state. You have control over your citizens, you can secure compliance with the rules, and you have superior means of coercion, right? Military apparatus, police apparatus, etc. It's kind of a scary and a bit fascist definition of the state, but it's a very common definition. And Dahl is careful here too to say that, like, no state has ever possessed a government that is fully democratic. Like, there's no such thing as a purely democratic state. It's on a spectrum, right? And there's no such thing as any country in reality that will ever even live up to these 5 criteria at all times. Um, but that doesn't mean we should just like be like, throw up our hands, like autocracy's fine too. Then, we should try to get as close to that ideal as possible, right? Okay. Yeah, that's actually it. This was a really short one. Um, we'll get into what happens when you move from associational level to state level in chapter 8, which is the next lecture. All right. Thanks for being here.